Welcome to the Prosperity Gap, where we discuss the financial gap that exists between where we are and where we should be. It's time to bridge that gap.
Hey, Prosperity Nation, welcome to the show. My name is Dave Hall. I'm the Prosperity Guy. Very excited to have you guys back for this week's show. This week I have with me Kahanic, who is one of the financial bloggers out there. You guys know that one of our big commitments to you is to introduce you to people that are trying to make a difference in the financial service industry. We realize that we don't have all the answers. We realize there are some other great, cool people out there that are trying to make a difference. And although she's just getting started in this world, we wanted to give her an opportunity to share some of her story, to be able to talk about why she does what she does, and hopefully connect you guys with her to allow her to influence you as she's influenced us and others that as she's written about finances and your own personal financial journey. So with that, Kat, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So Kat, we have one thing in common. We both live on islands. So I live in Puerto Rico. And where do you live?
I live outside of Buffalo, New York, on an island. It's between Buffalo and Niagara Falls, and mine is not tropical.
I thought it was very funny when I first read it because I read it on your website and you go through there and you see, oh, I live on an island. And the first thought is, especially for me where I live on one, oh, in the Caribbean, you must be next to me. When I saw the rest of it, I realized, okay, there's other islands in the world. They're not always green all year round.
That's right. It is very cold. It is definitely sub-freezing right now.
So, Kat, let's talk a little bit about your journey. What got you started in the financial literacy area where you actually have this interest to help people?
You know, a lot of people want to say, oh, it's like a silver bullet, or there was this one moment where you just kind of came to. But for myself and my husband, it was more of an evolution. You know, we've always wanted to do well with our finances, but it's over the years that we've really tried to work on honing in on that. And it's kind of been a gradual awakening. And so way back, I'd say right after we got married, so probably about 7 years ago, we were listening to Dave Ramsey in the car. And I thought, wow, why are these people always calling in and complaining about their debt? Why don't they just pay it off? And it kind of dawned on me. I thought, well, why aren't I listening to my own self? And why aren't we paying it off? And so that kind of started to get gears moving. And, you know, it's interesting. You think, oh, I'm doing these things, or I'm doing the baby steps, you know, and then it's like you go and read something and learn something more and be like, wow, I should do this. You know, I should cut cable. We should really look at our groceries and shop at Aldi versus, you know, the higher end grocery stores. And you slowly start to realize the efficiencies that you can do in your life to cut back on your spending and to reduce your debt.
That's one of the things that's always amazed me is how much money is just wasted. And we don't even realize it. I mean, it's stuff that we're either not using, it's stuff we're overpaying for, or it's stuff that really just doesn't matter when you consider our happiness in life. It's not making us any more happy, but yet we just continue to spend money on it. Right.
And I think it's figuring out what is of value to you. You know, if there is something that you're just like, oh my gosh, I love it, then I definitely support, like, go get it. Like, I don't think you should do frugality for frugality's sake. You know, I think that there needs to be that value there. And then everywhere else, if you're not interested in it, you know, for us personally, like, we're not really interested in having the nicest, shiniest cars. So we want to put more money into other things. Like, we want to have, you know, a nicer home or nicer decorations or things like that. That means more value to us.
That's one of the things that people always give me a bad time about. So here in Puerto Rico, we have minivans, which we almost had to because when we moved here, we had 5 kids, plus that were here on the island with us. We have a 6th one that was in Korea at the time. But with 5 kids and ourselves, that was 7 of us, we weren't going to fit in most vehicles. And so although I never wanted a minivan, we ended up buying 2 minivans when we got here. But you know, basically I just said, look, you know what, with the roads here, the way things are, we're just going to beat them to death. There's no reason to go out and buy an expensive car because in 5 years, these things are going to be worn out. And it just doesn't mean that much to me. And, you know, and I look at my friends that buy Mercedes, they spend, you know, $100,000 on a car. And I'm just like, you know what? That it just isn't that important. I'd much rather go spend $20,000, $30,000 a year on a nice vacation with my kids than I would drive a car that has an emblem on the front of it and says that somehow I'm important to somebody.
That's exactly right. Yes. And I feel like cars especially, they can be a huge money pit if you let them.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your back journey. So obviously you're married. You have, I'm not sure exactly how many children, more than one?
I have two kids. I
Okay.
have a 1.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old.
So talk about the journey from marriage to this point a little bit. I mean, you don't need to give us the whole travel log, but what was it like? Were you from similar families financially? How did that work as you guys came together?
Yeah, so we were generally from similar families financially, and it's funny. Our parents were teachers, just in different school districts. So our parents knew each other before we really knew each other, um, and but we, coming together, when with kids, it was interesting. So before kids, we're on this financial journey of like, okay, let's try to pay down debt, and we just had normal consumer debt. We had student loans, we had. Just some things on credit cards, nothing too crazy, but it was building up. We also invested in a business that was taking up a lot of money, so we had that. But at the same time, we were trying to have a baby, and it just wasn't happening. And we had to put things on hold because we had to pay for infertility treatments, which were astronomical. So it's you think the journey is, it's just going to be like this linear on a graph. It's going to be just linear. There's going to be no bumps in the road or anything like that. And it's not like that. It's like, well, what is a priority right now? And right now, a priority is having kids. And so it's, you save up your pennies and then you do treatments and you do medications and do all the things. And then, hopefully you have a success and you move, then it's like, okay, we have a break. And then let's go back onto this journey of trying to pay off our debts. And again, we did that, with our second child.
You make a very good point as you go through there and talk about your story, and that is that we do have to take breaks at times. That we just got to realize, I've had some health issues lately that have definitely changed the way I look at my own life. I've been in a situation where I can't work for a couple of months. And luckily, we're in a financial situation that's not killing our family. I'm still able to do other things. We have other investments that have happened, but it's definitely taken us off the path that we expected of, hey, we have all these goals. We have all these things we're trying to do. Well, now we've got to step back and look a little closer at life. And same with, trying to get pregnant. Like you say, it's not cheap. I've seen many of my clients go through the process, and it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars depending on where you live and the issues that you have. But then as you look at it, I think too, another key part of what you're saying is it's setting that goal, realizing, look, this is what we want. We're going to work to get it. And whatever it takes, we're going to work to get it. And once we have it, okay, now we can focus on something else. Right.
And that's exactly it. It's setting goals and understanding you're right. Like some things like life happens and it's like, okay, I'm really glad, we followed the baby steps and we have an emergency fund. And we've had to deplete the emergency fund. And then bring it back up. And I'll tell you, that is one of the most boring things of this journey. And that's actually where we are now. We paid off our debt except our mortgage, and we paid it off this summer. But now we're trying to refill our emergency fund. And it is just, I love the idea of saving for something more exciting like a vacation or something like that. But goodness gracious, I really hate saving up an emergency fund. But it's a vital part because life happens.
Right. So how have your finances changed since you've had kids? That's something that's important to me, obviously having 6 children.
Sure. Did you have to pay for daycare?
No, luckily, no. So my wife stayed home the whole time. So luckily, I've seen many clients that have had to and very, very expensive. But luckily for us, my wife has been able to stay home our whole marriage. So.
I think daycare is just the biggest expense. And it's so frustrating too, because even you're paying so much and the daycare workers, they get very little. And so there's a huge churn through daycare too of the teachers that your kids grow to love. So that is by far and away childcare is just a huge, huge expense. For us, where we're at, for the 2 kids, it's about $24,000 a year. So you have to figure out, is it worth it for you to stay at home or go to work and make more money that way, or is it not? And then you can always try to work out a part-time situation. But that probably for us is just the biggest dent. I had a friend, once his kids went through daycare, he actually bought a pool with the money that he would spend because he's like, I no longer have to pay for this expense. People talk about as kids get older, sports too is a huge expense. And I'm like, not 24 grand a year expensive.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things many people don't realize. I know when we first started, we had 4 kids under the age of 5 and younger. So we had the first 4 very close together.
Yes.
And then the next 2 came 5 years later. But diapers, formula, all of those things. I'm like, how are you going to handle this? Now I somewhat laugh because although it was very expensive, well, now obviously those 4 kids are in college.
Right.
3 of the 4, the 4th one's going this next year. My other kids are in private school here on the island. And you're right. I'm sitting here going, I cannot believe how much my budget is going to education. But yet I wouldn't have it any other way. Obviously, I want them to get educated. I realize that's an important part of the process. And you do it, but it definitely changes your budget. I often talk to people. It's like I could have all the Porsches I wanted, but instead I chose to have kids. And I'm very grateful that I did. It's like the cost of them, I could have bought any car I wanted out there, and never had to worry about it. But again, I think it's making those priorities, and you're making some very critical points for people to understand. Kat, let's talk a little bit about your importance on the family finances. I know that's something that's very important to you, is not just doing it alone. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important to you and why people really should make it a family matter?
It's interesting because you listen to a lot of advice, and there's a ton of good advice out there, but it's very much focused on an individual perspective. And I think that's really good starting out. If you want to change anything, your diet, your lifestyle, how you spend money, anything like that, it's really important to, see if it resonates with you first. But then if I listen to something, I quickly think, okay, how is that going to change my family life? If I want to change my diet and do something like keto or, Whole30 or something like that, okay, how is that going to work and feed 2 toddlers? And in my experience, it doesn't work necessarily too well when you have a toddler that frowns at anything green that arrives on his plate. So it's things like that. It's getting everyone on board as much as you can, and making sure that you're at least going in the same general direction. And everyone might not want to do it the exact same way, but it's a whole house effort to get everything in the direction that you want for your goals.
So is it pretty easy for you guys to get on the same page initially, or is one of you more of a spender, one of you more of a saver?
100% my husband is the saver and I am the spender. So he was always really, really focused on finances. He nerds out on that. And I really let him to it. I let him do that. But for me, it was like, okay, what's our budget? And we would talk about it. And I would always feel very constrained by it. And it was until that we really, instead of talking about the numbers, we were more talking about the goals like that. It was a slight change in the conversation of, well, what do you really want out of this? Whatever this would be, out of this year, out of this vacation, out of these gifts that we're going to do for Christmas or something like that. Then you're really kind of focusing more, and it's like, okay, I can have a better understanding, and I can get more on board with that with him. But it's naturally, I am the spender because I'm the grocery shopper. I'm the one that's doing the gifts. It's easy for him to set a budget, if we're not on the same page, but that's what really helps. We have budget meetings probably about once a week. We go over the numbers, we talk about where we're at, if we got some big expenses going on. And that really helps because we're talking about goals, not just once a month, but, pretty often, at least once a week. And it helps reframe my thinking too, before I start spending. And I say spending just anytime you're buying anything. If you're buying just the normal groceries, if you're buying just the normal clothes or doing the car maintenance or anything like that.
To me, I think that's one of the biggest problems that most couples have is they just can't openly communicate about these type of things, whether it's their own fear of what the other one's reaction is going to be, whether it's just a belief that they're not going to be on board. I'm not sure, for each couple, obviously it's going to be something different. But to me, that's one of the biggest problems I've found even in my own marriage. If I can communicate something with my wife on a consistent basis, we pretty much can get through anything, and we can pretty much make the right decisions if we're working at it together.
I totally agree with that. Last year we had some money come in that I was pretty excited about. And, it was a busy time of year, and I deposited the money and just let it lie. And then I started to buy some things. And my husband's like, what are you doing? We don't have any money. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he later showed me, he's like, let's look at the holes that we kind of plugged, just because we have a budget, do we have a deficit here or a deficit there? And I was really upset before we had that conversation. And now, and then I walked away being like, oh, I understand. And he too walked away, I'll speak a little bit for him, saying, okay, we need to talk a little bit more about if we have some things going on, where is it going and why is it going there?
Yeah, very important that you have those open communication. They're not always going to be pleasant. I mean, that's the other thing that people need to realize. Communication in a marriage isn't always about both of you completely agreeing day one on what's going to happen. It's basically being willing to continue talking until you can both come to a negotiating point to say, look, okay, I'll give on this area. This is very important to me and I want to have it. And you give on that area and we can come to a compromise and still achieve the goals that we're each trying to accomplish.
Yes. And I remember early on in our budget conversations, it was not pretty. I mean, it stinks, just looking at it's right there in black and white, or maybe black and red, and depending on your spreadsheet colors of kind of your bad habits. It's something that you can't necessarily turn away from once you start doing it. But it's doing the work and being like, instead of feeling bad about what you did in the past, it's reflecting and saying, what can I do for moving forward in the future? Because you can't fix those financial mistakes.
Yeah, and I think another key thing that people need to realize as you're going through there is it isn't an opportunity to just pick on the other one as well. And I think that can happen, especially when you're first getting started, that it's very easy to see all your spouse's bad habits and try to bring those to the forefront without looking either at your own or maybe, again, you're in a situation that you've been very financially responsible and they're just not. But if you're just going to sit and nitpick what they're doing and degrade them, you're not going to get anywhere when it comes down to it.
I think that's right. I think it's going in with a mindset. Instead of looking at like, yes, you do this and I don't do anything, or, like anything bad, it's going in and being like, how can we work on this together? Yeah. I think that's a really good point of you just going in and knowing that this isn't a battle, and maybe it isn't a battle, but it's a battle that you're in together.
Yeah, you're not there to tell each other what to do. You're there to help come up with solutions, allow each other to come up with solutions, to work together. Now, obviously, we need to make recommendations at times. Hey, I think we ought to do this. I think we ought to do that. But I think many times that we can allow them to come up with their own solutions, we end up with better results. And for those of you out there that are struggling with your marriage, that are struggling with your finances, if I could give you any advice, it's to just keep those lines of communication open. And again, don't go forward with it trying to force it down someone's throat. You've got to be open, build the opportunity for them to make their own decisions, to start making the changes themselves.
Something that I'd like to work on too, that we haven't figured out a perfect way to do it, is my husband's an engineer and he has all these Excel spreadsheets. And I understand Excel and everything like that, but they're really boring to look at. So we're looking at something like, what is the perfect software out there? And we have not yet found that, of something that I can quickly glance at so that I'm not always using it, So it's something that we're still working on in this. I don't want to say that we're, kumbaya, we hold hands every week and during our budget meetings and say, wow, this is so wonderful.
But I think you bring up a very important point, though, and that is that the same method doesn't work for everyone. For our family, I do most of the financial accountability side of what goes on. Luckily, we've been in a position that my wife's been able to, she's not a big spender, so she's able to kind of spend what she wants because she's not going to go crazy and buy, $1,000 item or a $5,000 item. And, that's just not going to happen. That's not who she is. So it allows her to buy the thing she wants to buy. Her biggest thing for her was she wanted to go to the grocery store and never have to worry about what she bought there. And she's finally to the point that she's able to do that. In our early days, she did a lot of couponing. She did a lot of things to get us to this point. But I think it's being able to understand where each person falls and really what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I totally relate with your wife on that. It would just be so much easier. Just go to the store and just buy what you need and get the heck out.
Yeah, it was really funny because in our early marriage, we had an opportunity. We were in a business where we went on a business trip and we went to the home of the owner who owned a beautiful home in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, it was a multi-million-dollar home, something we'd never really been a part of, never seen. And she talked to the wife, and the wife talked about how she just loved being able to go to the grocery store and buy whatever she wanted. That was her most important thing. And it just hit a chord with my wife. that from then on, that was her big goal. She's like, I just want to stop this couponing. I want to stop having to worry about, can I buy the name brand or do I have to buy the generic, and is it going to be the same quality? And for her, it's been great because for the last, say, 10 years or so, she's been able to do that. And it's really helped her because that's fulfilled her need to spend, which then has allowed us to continue to budget and do the things we need to, because for her, that's the important thing. For me, hey, it's travel. Again, I want to go on a nice vacation with all the kids. I want to spend a week or two in some foreign country and be able to enjoy the time together. Well, that's where I'm going to blow, unfortunately, a much larger amount of money, but it's going to be once a year, maybe twice a year.
Right. I think that's really smart, just identifying what your priorities and understanding each other, what their priorities.
So talk a little bit about starting the Family FI project. What got you interested in starting to do financial blogging?
We talk about money all the time. So my husband and I always talked about that. And it's sort of a funny story. My cousin is a financial blogger. And she runs the Reluctant Landlord, .net. And she's been going to FinCon for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. Have you been to FinCon?
I've never been there yet. No, I've read about it, but I've never been there.
Okay. So she's just been hounding me. She's like, you should go. And I just wanted to go just to see what it would be like. And it's interesting. I'd like to talk with people that are also frugally minded and things like that. So there was an opportunity where it was in DC this past year. And the stars aligned where, I have my aunt and uncle were there. They were able to, get me from the airport, and I was able to stay with my cousin in her hotel room. So we shared that, and we had, it was just really funny because we hadn't bonded like that since we were kids. So I was like, yep. So I went to FinCon, and it opened up my world, seeing like what people are doing to help spread the message. And whatever their message is, it could be frugality. It could be talking about credit card hacking. It could be talking about just basic budgeting. It could be talking about any other thing. And it was really, really just mind-opening to go to this huge event where people were so kind and so nice. You hear about that, but it's like to experience it. And you're with people that many of them were financially independent. And there's an ease with that. There's no competition. They're just like, here's all this knowledge I have, and let me share it with you. And I loved it. I drank the Kool-Aid. I thought, this is awesome. And my husband and I, just after years of doing frugality and doing budgeting and just, trying to have, the family that we have, all of those lessons, I'm like, we got to, put our own message out there. So that was the instigator, going to FinCon, and it got my gears turning. Just what could we do?
Well, I think it's super cool that you've focused on the family, that you've focused on that important unit. And again, I think it's something that financial industry is not providing enough effort. It's very interesting. In fact, when one of my clients is one of the top timeshare salesmen in the country. Okay. And I wanted to go to one of his events once because I wanted to see how it works. And he's like, Dave, you can't come. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm in Vegas all the time by myself. We have an office there, so I travel there all the time. I'm like, I have absolutely nothing to do. I'm not going to go to the bars. I'm not going to go to the casinos. I'm not going to do all these things. Let me come to one of your events. And he says, no, it doesn't work that way. We have to have the husband and wife together or you're not invited. And I'm like, well, why is that the case? And he says, because if not, you're going to have an excuse for not being able to make a decision. We know that with both of you there, then both decision makers are there and we can get a decision. And I think, unfortunately, in the financial service world, they don't focus on together enough on the positive. Here's a side that you're trying to sell something, and however people feel about timeshares, that's up to you. Right. But on a positive side, when you're going into buy a house, buy a car, do these other things, many times it's very secluded. It's like, hey, you just do it by yourself, and then you can worry about your spouse when you get home. We're not going to get involved in that side of it.
Right.
Much nicer if society as a whole would insist that, hey, if you're married, you need to start making more of these decisions as a couple. I think we'd see a lot more progress and people making a lot better decisions.
And it's certainly easier, yes, when you have your spouse with you, like in lockstep of, yes, we're going to do this. That's very smart of your client to do that.
Yeah, very interesting to see how that world works and the way that they do things. And again, I didn't realize it at first. I thought it was really odd when I'd walk through the casinos at times, go to a hotel room or something, and I'm like, these guys are approaching everybody but me. And then when he explained it, I'm like, oh, because I'm the single guy walking through. They're approaching the couples, they're approaching these other people that are there with for their vacation together, which is obviously what I wasn't there for. So I know you guys have had a bad business experience up to this point. And so question to you would be, and you don't have to get into all the details of it, but what did you learn? First question. And two, would you do it again? Would business be something you'd look to in the future?
It's interesting because it's like, what did I learn? And it's like a whole lot. When my husband started to do this, it was with a really good friend. It's when our finances were very separate. We were like, my husband has his finances and I have mine, and we'd have one communal joint checking account that we both contribute to just to cover the basic costs, yada, yada, yada. And we weren't married, but we were living together. And so I just stayed out of it. I was like, this is it. I'll let you do what you need to do. And I don't think it was anything bad. It was just a lot of money, and I just wasn't paying attention. And eventually, it was like, as we became closer and closer with our finances, I realized the depth of how much was invested. And I was like, is this something that we necessarily want to do? And you talk about it wasn't necessarily bad. And I don't love that we spent all this money that we didn't get a return on. But it was really, we just weren't on the same page. And then as our relationship grew stronger, we got married, and after all of that, we're combining finances. That was just really interesting to be like, okay, is this what we want to do? Yes, we're friends, but is this the path? And it was interesting, the way that my husband was really kind of developing the way he wanted to spend his money. It was changing then from our business partner, our friend. And it's not right or it's not wrong. It was just different. And so I think a good lesson that we learned was like, okay, let's take a step back and preserve the friendship, because that was ultimately our goal. And we were able to do that, to a large extent. So I'm really happy to say that. So the lessons that we've learned, I wouldn't necessarily invest with your friend. And you hear that, but it was interesting because we didn't live at that time on a not tropical island outside of Buffalo. We lived far away from our friend. So it was a way that my husband and his friend could stay close. We lived far away, and it was a way that they could talk on the phone every night and strategize with the business and things like that. So the intentions were 100% pure and good. It's just over time, it evolved into something that just no longer aligned with what we wanted to do.
So would you do it again, as far as just business in general? Now, not obviously saying you need to go in with friends or family, or.
I would, because part of it was real estate, and I still really like real estate, and I would love to get into it. I wouldn't do it the same way. So yes, I would. I wouldn't do the same way. We took money out of our 401k. I would not have done that. I would have slow rolled it more and talked more about as the business, because you think, oh, I'm going to start this business. Well, then things change. You have this ideal map of the way things go, and it's not necessarily happening. So it's like, okay, how do we change it? And does that still make sense for us, for what we're doing with our money?
And I think the key there is us. What are you guys doing together? And I think that is the key. I know I did one decision on my own, one business decision. I've done tons of businesses. All of them have been approved by my wife, but one. And it went south, and it really affected our marriage. And I look back on it and I'm like, Dave, you were so stupid. She kept telling you not to do it. And if I'd listened to her, she's like, just do not do this.
Right.
And being the business guy, big ego, I'm like, yeah, you're a stay-at-home mom, and again, completely wrong, completely, place that I've come from that definitely don't feel that way about her at all anymore. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, her decisions and her opinions are very important for me. and I need to listen to those. And luckily it happened early in our marriage. And so I woke up very quickly and said, hey, you know what? This lady oftentimes knows way more than I do. She may be staying at home and not doing what I'm doing, but she's paying attention. She's very smart. She's obviously able to run our family far better than I ever could. It's like, I need to listen to her. And as I started to do that, our finances started to get better, our marriage got better, and we started having much, much more success in what we were doing.
That makes total sense. It's, and you look, hindsight's 2020, you think, of course, why'd we do that? So I totally understand. You look back and think, oh, I had ego involved or something like that. But you make the best decision you can at the time. And it's important not to beat yourself up over it and just try to move forward.
Yeah, that's an important thing as well. You just need to look forward. If you made bad decisions in the past, Prosperity Nation, if you've done things that you shouldn't have, if your marriage, even your relationship's not where you want it to be, put that stuff in the past. You don't have to worry about what's gone on behind you. In fact, many times it's what's gone on in the past that makes us who we are going forward and gives us the strength to be able to make those good decisions and to do those things that we really should be doing. So very great advice, Kat, as far as what people should be looking at, and that's the future.
That's right. And this might get a little bit woo-woo, but something that's really been interesting for me is taking time to reflect every day and doing some type of meditative practice or something like that. And sometimes I just cringe so bad on past decisions that I've made. But really, it is that, what can we do moving forward? And that's something that meditation has really helped me. And it's like, okay, next steps. I don't want to dwell on the past. What can I do today so that I can put my head down on my pillow at the end of the day and say, I did my best, and I'm going to do these things better tomorrow.
Such great advice. Well, our time's come and gone. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Can you tell the listeners how they can go to your blog, learn more about the Family FI Project and what you're doing?
Yep, it's just familyfiproject.com. It's familyfiproject.com. That's where you can see me, and we're starting to document our progress and all the things that we're doing.
Kat, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really I had a good time.
Prosperity Nation, you have been listening to The Prosperity Gap. This is a show where we help you bridge your gap between the life you're living and the life you should be. My name's Dave Hall. I've been your host. For those of you that have not yet subscribed to our show, please take the opportunity to do so. So every Friday, you can have in your inbox access to our new shows, what's going on. You can continue to learn about the various things we're doing to help improve the financial stability of not only your family and those who listen to us, but also hopefully the world as we continue to battle this thing called financial literacy.